right, it sounds like we are doing good. Well, it wouldn't be live entertainment without some technical hiccups. So let's let's get into the session. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. This is our 7th Ask the Expert session for the Azure Synapse influencers. We've got 2 very special guests. We've got Svea Troina as well as Uri Barash from the Azure Data Explorer team. I want to remind everybody that this is an exclusive event just for Azure Synapse influencers. So if you're not a Synapse influencer, get out of here. Just kidding. If you're not an influencer, just join. It's very free, very easy. You can go to aka.ms/Synapse influencers. If you have friends, we're always looking for new friends. So join the program. It's super easy. I'm sure all of you already know that. Let's see what else we have for housekeeping. All right, so if you want to ask questions, just ask questions with the Q&A feature for Teams Live. If you submit a question before the event, we'll try to prioritize those, so they'll jump the line, so to speak. Some of the questions are going to be answered live, and we'll answer some of them in the comments, offline, that kind of a thing. Try to stay on topic, so if you really want to hear about Spark or ADF, something like that, data integration, great questions. I love getting more questions. However, obviously, we're going to focus on the more Kusto end of things today. Let's see what else. If we do answer your questions in the chat, do keep in mind that people will be able to see your name when we answer those. The session is being recorded, just as a heads up. Let's see. If attendees would like some of our new branded swag, then they should ask a question in the Q&A window and share your social details. So another perk. And then also, if you want to email us after the session, you can email us at synapseinfluencers@microsoft.com to claim your swag code. All right. So with all of that stuff out of the way, again, we have Uri and Svea with us today to talk about Azure Data Explorer and Kusto, all of those wonderful things. I am, of course, Ryan Majitimer. I'm sure you guys have all seen me. Maybe my ego is too big from that, but it's all good. We've also got some of my teammates. I'm sure you've met a lot of those or seen them at previous events. We've got Pavel, Ricardo, Tyler, Terrence. All very friendly people. They'll be helping in the chat to moderate things. All right, and without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Uri.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. So, not everyone is always aware of Azure Data Explorer. We used to call it like Azure Best Kept Secret, but we'll share a very short overview just to get everyone on the same page, and then we'll be able to go ahead with the questions and all the other fun stuff. So I'm Uri. I'm a little bit about telemetry. Telemetry is the largest and fastest growing data segment in our industry. The reason is that it's very easy to instrument and start getting piles and piles and piles on data. And we're talking about huge amounts of devices, huge amount of data that is being collected from everything that humans or machines or devices are doing. And we are seeing that growth on a daily basis. It's like incredible numbers. When we're talking about like what is Azure Data Explorer, we call the technology Kusto. It's a near real-time analytics data platform for observational or telemetry data at petabyte scale. And it's a complete analytic storage engine built on top of compute and storage. Now it's available also in Synapse. It's also optimized for timestamp data, logs, time series, measurements, in general telemetry. It's there with native support for fast changing schemas, so free text, structured and semi-structured data types are natively supported, so that even when the data keeps changing, you are still able to analyze it and extract the insights out of it. Because with this technology, we are able to ingest raw data immediately and make it available for query. It provides near real-time visibility, and near real-time we're talking about second, sometimes sub-second, in order to be able to query activity that have just happened. And also we take a lot of pride in the performance of the queries, so that they are interactive and return in seconds, so that you can really progress quickly, either present that like render dashboards or investigate things really quickly. When we're talking about the query language, we've developed a special query language for interactive analytics, interactive ad hoc analytics, that's called the Kusto query language. And that query language is used also by Azure Monitor, Application Insights, our security products, and more products by our partners and within Microsoft. Just in terms of like the data platform, while it's might be less familiar, it's one of the largest data platforms on Earth, ingesting over 110 petabytes of data per day, hosting more than 11 exabytes, and running on millions of VM cores in order to generate analytics, both for Microsoft needs and also our partners and customer needs. It was the key for Microsoft digital transformation, and it allows Microsoft to sense everything that's happening around it. This is a little bit about the journey. Like practically every product and service that Microsoft is using Azure Data Explorer or Kusto in order to sense what is it doing. It's also available as a data platform that powers our analytical solutions as services. And starting 2019 and like lately, in November 2021, we actually made it officially part of Synapse, and it's called Data Explorer Pools in Synapse Analytics. That's the overview. We've done that in order to complement the SQL pools and Spark pools in Synapse Analytics to cover the broad set of cloud scale analytics scenarios, specifically for telemetry analytics, interactive. And that's the context. And with that, we'll move to answer some of the questions, and we'll start with a cool question. Says like, what's coming up for Azure Data Explorer? So first, I'll jump to this slide. It's evolving very quickly, not only Azure Data Explorer, but also Azure Synapse Data Explorer, the version within Synapse. It's practically the same data service, but hosted within the Synapse framework, well integrated into Synapse. And most of the things that I'm going to talk about here are relevant to both the in-workspace and out-of-workspace instances. So over the last year, we've rolled out Engine v3, a completely new implementation of the Kusto underlying engine that improved performance dramatically. We've added sequence analytics, geospatial capabilities. We've added materialized views, the ability to control partitioning of the data beyond the native like time-based partitioning. We've added parquet ingestion, soft delete, hot cache windows in order to be able to warm specific windows of cache and make them available for fast queries. And we've made a lot of advancements to the dashboard and the real-time dashboard capabilities. This is what we've just announced in Ignite. A pretty large set of progress. We've announced the ability to stream the Cosmos DB data from Cosmos DB into Azure Synapse Data Explorer, Azure Data Explorer, adding another Synapse link capability, especially for telemetry data that is very often stored in Cosmos DB for operational purposes. We've had the support for AWS ingestion, native AWS ingestion. We've finalized the direct connection from Stream Analytics, so it could ingest output of like stream processing directly into Data Explorer. We've added Open Telemetry connector. We're still waiting for the final completion of the pull request, but that and the ability to support streaming for Telegraph. We've added something that we've been working on for quite some time, the ability to switch compute skew under the covers in order to allow to optimize the compute skew for the workload and adapt to new and most performant new compute skews. The support for the new compute LS v3 and LAS v3, the AMD version, is a huge performance boost that we are rolling out these days. The capability is there, but we are now starting to actively migrate both our internal workloads and working with the relevant customers to recommend that they switch to those like new compute elements. We've accelerated the ability to do data sharing so that you can share specific tables from another database and share that to other teams and even other tenants across tenant boundaries. We are releasing the ADX real-time dashboard to general availability, so it will be fully supported and fully available across all regions, including government clouds, air-gapped clouds, etc. The query power elements, sequence analytics is a huge thing, the ability to detect attacks in security or to detect malfunctions that involve a set of like multi-step phenomena. And doing this without running joins is a dramatic performance improvement and allows like query power that was never available before. And that's just like a really short overview of what we've released. There is a link here, and we'll share this afterwards. But the blog is available, and you can read thoroughly. A little bit what's coming up next. We are adding the ability to ingest and query data lake. We'll complete the open telemetry pull option into the open telemetry foundation, and also the integration with the home assistants, the most prevalent home automation open source platform that has like native integration with Azure Data Explorer, Azure Synapse Data Explorer these days. And we also are going to support in the next month and a half. We're going to add the ability to move all databases from an ADX cluster to a Synapse Data Explorer pool, vice versa, and even between Azure Data Explorer clusters themselves. We're also enabling the ability to find a partner that is prevalent and an expert on Custo and ADX, and adding like more capabilities in machine learning and virtual environments. Awesome. So distribution versus partitions. I'm not sure that I understand the question, but I can talk a little bit about what's distribution and partitions in Azure Data Explorer. Azure Data Explorer is a distributed query engine, and the data is actually cached and distributed across the different machines, which makes it possible for us to analyze queries on petabyte scales really quickly. We do have the ability to support partitioning. So in case where you want to run very high concurrency applications, when every query is asking about one entity and you don't want to employ all the different machines in the cluster in order to answer like one user question, then we've added the ability to apply partitioning policy and say like all the data that's associated with one identity, for example, a user ID or a meter ID or a car or whatever, will be packed together or relatively together. So the query will actually hit a fewer number of nodes, allowing the other nodes to address other queries and support like high concurrency. So this is a little bit about distribution and partitioning. Update policies. The
Wait,
update,
do you want
yeah.
to give Ryan the opportunity to read the entire question about update policy?
Oh, by all means, yeah. Go ahead. If you still have the question, that's what. I'll read it. No worries. No worries. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So GS_MCM. I'm sure I'm going to butcher all of these social handles, so pardon me for that. But asks, we use some rather advanced update policies to transform data. It can be pretty hard to get a firm grip on which ones are heavily impacted or heavily impacting our clusters and which ones are not. I'd love to understand how to performance tune and our update policies.
So that's a great question, and like with update policies, the best thing to do with them is first to run the query and make sure that we optimize the query upfront. When we're looking at like .show operations, and we're looking at the telemetry that we are emitting to log analytics, Azure Monitor Log Analytics, you can actually query that data and understand like what ingestion operations are more costly than others, and that's the best answer now. I think that we do want to add more insights as part of the Azure Data Explorer insights, or like in Azure Monitor Insights, in order to create more visibility into the different ingestion pipelines and how much CPU cycles is invested in those challenges. So it's still possible to do it, but I completely agree that we need to invest a little bit more in making that super visible so people know exactly where CPU is spent there.
Awesome. All right. So for the next question, this is going to be a hard one to say. So the social handle is we'll go with Doobie Niraj. super sorry if I totally butchered that one. But how do I access? I think this is for Tzvia. How do I access the CSV data from data lake storage as part of ASL in an optimized way in Synapse Analytics?
Okay, so today the way that we recommend to access data is by using Azure Storage in the middle. We are working on some direct access. So if you have CSV data, just upload it to Azure and use, if it's one time, just use it as a just one as part of the one-click experience of the Cousteau Web Explorer. If it's something continuously defined event grid on top of it for continuous ingestion of the data into Cousteau. Uri, do you want to add more information on top of it?
Yeah, what I can say is that, like, especially when the data is in data lake storage, we do support both via the ingestion wizard, the ability to like listen to that data lake, and every new file that lands there is getting ingested and available, is getting ingested, organized in a column store, even if the source is CSV, compressed and indexed, so that you can search it very effectively. You can still treat the CSV data sets in the data lake folder as the master data, but use Azure Data Explorer as a cache on top of this that allows you to query massive amounts of data in seconds. So that's the recommendation. Just like you don't need to move it out of the data lake, you can just like create a cache copy in Azure Data Explorer and use it when you want to.
Awesome. All right. For our next question, we've got a question from MNoLimits. Will it be possible to commit KQL scripts as comfortable Git integration as it is with Synapse, including update policy, etc.? I think this is for Uri.
Yeah, so Synapse already supports like KQL script as well, and you can use the same technologies over there. We are thinking about improving the availability of KQL scripts. One thing that I did not mention in the coming up is we are working on making the KQL scripts actually the entire profile of tabs and let me show you that. So the entire profile of tabs and queries in the Azure Data Explorer UI, we are working to make it persistent. So it is persistent across machines and across even browsers, and not rely only on the queries. In very much like we're doing with dashboards. Dashboards are already a way to share KQL queries, but once that environment is persistent in the same storage as dashboards and their queries, then it will be persistent across machines and across browsers.
So you would use this instead of using Git and using the Synapse Git integration?
So I think it's not instead, it's both. I think that's
okay.
the key thing. So if you need the Git integration, you can use the Synapse workspace, and then you get the functionality that's there with Git, and the ability to store that as part of the workspace, as part of the repository. If you're if you want it to be more personal, just roaming with you, then you can use the Azure Data Explorer UI, and then it roams with you. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Okay, one thing that I want to mention, and I don't know if you are familiar with, I'd like to encourage everyone to take a shot at the game that we've published, the Cousteau Detective Agency, and it has a set of like cool riddles. We already have like thousands of people that have solved the first and second riddles. The riddles are available for everyone to try and crack. So please, you are encouraged to try it out and get a nice badge, and also like pick up some KQL
Nice
skills
prices.
on the way. What?
There are
And
also
there are
very nice
prices.
prices, you know, not only
Exactly.
badges are nice, KQL skills are awesome,
But prizes are even better. Yes.
Exactly.
Like,
If
yeah,
can I do this if I don't already have a Cousteau cluster?
oh, by all means. If you because you go and get the riddle. The riddle is to a degree almost agnostic of a Cousteau cluster, but with the free personal Cousteau clusters, you can actually go and create your own free personal Cousteau clusters, load the data. You can also load other things like your home automation logs, or your dive logs, or your phone bills, or whatever, like every data that you want. It's about, like, if we're looking at the amount of data it's about like 100 gigabyte of data that you can store there and analyze pretty freely. Go ahead and try it out. It's pretty cool, and definitely send us feedback.
All right. Let's see what else we have. Okay, so this is an interesting one for Uri. When will Data Explorer pools and Synapse be generally available?
That's a good question. We don't have a date yet. It's we're trying to time it with the rest of the components that are moving across the wave of products. We are supporting this Data Explorer pools in Synapse just as if they are generally available. We are enabling the ability to we are enabling the we're reducing the cost of making a mistake and choosing ADX versus the Data Explorer pools in Synapse by making the functionality to move all databases from Data Explorer pools into ADX clusters and vice versa. So what works for you right now is the best route that you should take. If you need, I actually have a slide on that. So how do we choose? Like, how do we know like which ones to use at this point? Then with ADX standalone, it's generally available. It is a little bit easier to manage for ISV workloads. It allows transparency into Azure Compute and Storage, and also reserved instances. If you use them, it allows you to choose things like isolated compute, or even like very soon confidential compute, and allows like in-place sharing of tables, as I mentioned, across team boundaries, across subscription boundaries, even across tenant boundaries. So if you have a data that you host for a customer and you want to share like a specific table with them, you can do it without duplicating the storage, just by sharing that table over using Azure Data Share. The huge advantage of DX pools in Synapse is that you set up Synapse once. If you've set up Synapse and you set up the workspace, like starting with DX pools is a breeze. Even if you use like virtual networks, and even if you are and if you've already went through certification in your company, it's super easy, because it's just another feature that just works within the already set up workspace. So if you're a heavy user of Synapse Analytics and you already have the workspace, super easy to start and have your own DX pool. The one thing that we are and that I did not mention is we are adding like the pre-purchase plan support. So even preview DX pools are going to be able to consume from the Synapse repurchase plan, which is also a big boon.
Awesome. Who are the most common competitors for ADX?
Wonderful question. So let me switch to this one. Don't have this slide on this deck, but I'll find it out like in another one very quickly. But the thing is, there are Azure Data Explorer is a pretty unique product. It was built in order to deal specifically, purposely built for the telemetry workload, interactive analytics over telemetry activity, and we're seeing a lot of partial overlaps between Azure Data Explorer and other products. For example, very often we compete with Google BigQuery, not on classic data warehouse workloads, but actually on telemetry workloads, on very long, very large tables of activity. And we've even published a comparison. Actually, GigaOM published a benchmark that compares how Snowflake, Google BigQuery, and Azure Data Explorer deal with this type of telemetry data, and the results are actually pretty incredible. I'll show it in a few seconds. Another question that we get is, what's the difference between Spark and all the derivatives of the Spark platform and Azure Data Explorer? And the answer is that Spark is a wonderful platform, and it's awesome for batch processing, for ETL workloads, for machine learning training, for a lot of managing batch. And for interactive workloads, Azure Data Explorer is typically only between 10 and 20 times faster than Spark workloads when trying to address ad hoc interactive queries, because of the indexing, because of the caching, etc. So that's another competition. But we also we actually offer them together. We offer Spark, Synapse Spark for batch analysis, and as Data Explorer pools for interactive analysis on the same data. So if you use Synapse, if you use ADX and Synapse Spark together, you get actually the best engine for the workloads. So it's not really a competition in that context. Other products that we have been competing with and replacing, because Azure Data Explorer does a really good job on time series, we are seeing a replacement of Influx DBs, products we haven't seen TimeStream, Amazon TimeStream too much, but typically very relatively easy competes, and also CrateDB and other time series databases. I think I covered the topmost. Oh, the one last family, we are replacing Elasticsearch quite a lot for log and telemetry. Elasticsearch by the way, is a beautiful platform. It's a great natural language search engine with a lot of unmatched capabilities in natural language analysis, boosting ranking, etc. So the search engine for websites, it's incredible. When you are trying to deploy it on large, heavy-duty telemetry workloads, it works to a degree, but it's dramatically less cost efficient. We've published how LinkedIn and also Defender for 365 moved from Elasticsearch to Azure Data Explorer, dramatic improvement in cost and performance. Another one that is also noteworthy is when you think about Splunk. At Microsoft, we replaced a lot of Splunk solutions, especially in like Office and Windows. Splunk is perceived very often as both a security solution and an operational telemetry and analytics solutions. Actually, the best combination to that we offer as a replacement for Splunk is Sentinel, that covers the security aspects, and Azure Data Explorer to cover the custom logs, the log retention, the other data platformic aspects of the Splunk replacement. I think I'm done on that.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So I think we have two related questions for Tzvia. So the first one is how do you get started with ADX? And then the second one is what are the best usage scenarios for ADX?
Okay, I will start with the first. The second one is me and Uri will share together. So Azure Data Explorer is a very powerful service, and as Uri mentioned at the beginning, it's one of the most kept secret in Azure. But our customers, and you can see at the customer stories site of Microsoft, use it in very diverse ways, different options, different industries, different scenarios, even with different loads. So, but first, we need to understand what is the capability, what are the options. For that, we collapse a couple of courses and tutorials that can help you to start. I will post it as well in the chat area, but I will. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I think we should be able to see it now.
Wonderful.
Or give it 1 second. I think it's coming through any second now.
Going there.
All right, now we're good. Yep.
Wonderful. So there is a blog that we update frequently with new content. So we are working on MS Learns. Actually, there are already 2 new MS Learns, how to start with what is Azure Data Explorer, how to use it, KQL, advanced KQL, very good place to start, and courses. There are 2 free Pluralsight courses that you could try and practice. Whether it's what is Azure Data Explorer end-to-end, KQL, that it's always good to know, and of course, advanced topic. The Azure Data Explorer product group is like a very motivated team that we want to hear you. You have comments, you have feedbacks, you have questions. We are there to listen, whether it's in Stack Overflow, Twitter, in the LinkedIn group, everything. We are there. Share your insights, share your questions, and we are there to support. So, how to start? Start with this link and go and move forward. And again, we are here to support. And from the other side, what are the most common scenarios for Azure Data Explorer? I'm pretty sure that Uri, do you have the slide of the industries and okay, now
Yeah,
move back.
I do. I'll move over and I'll tell like a few like a few representative stories. So
you can, okay, in a second you will see that Azure Data Explorer has customers from all over the spectrum of industries, whether it's mobility, IoT, advertising, and security, and more. As you saw in the one of the first slides that Uri shared, the service have started as a niche internal Microsoft product. that is also here, almost every service use it. And when we went out first externally at 4 years ago, it was per demands of external customers. You can see that we have customers from Renault and Daimler that use it on automotive experiences. Also, Tabula use it for advertisement to control and manage all the operation. Okay, wonderful. Go ahead and share the story of Daimler.
Yeah, so Daimler is like they started with connecting trucks. So every third truck in the US is currently sending telemetry to Azure Data Explorer. Then they actually moved to connect the factory floors for trucks. And now think about it, they can, like, for every batch of brakes that they installed in a truck, they can know where those brakes are, where's the nearest service center. They even built an application that comes with the trucks for fleet managers, so they can actually operate those trucks, knows which one needs to go to a service, and also the knowledge, to sharing the knowledge of like what can we tell the driver in order to like self address an issue, or how to get to the best service center quickly. That's one aspect. Hilo is doing energy. They're selling electricity savings back to the power grid, and they're using KQL in order to do all the machine learning and all the analytics on like when it's better to like when they can control like when devices are operating or not. Very interesting company, especially in the in our desire as a race to flatten our electricity usage. Checkpoint software. Yeah.
I'm just excited to share one of the new customers that just was published earlier this week. Is now I will try to do it correct. Nanki Shirimama from Japan, one of the most popular airports in Japan, decided to work with Azure Data Explorer, Digital Twin Event Hub to manage an operation, also all the backend experiences, but use the same technologies also to improve the customer experience and to provide better high performance interaction with their technology. And it's very nice and interesting story. Understand. Now back to Checkpoint.
Let's see how are we doing with time. I can do customer stories all day, so
yeah, I think maybe one more and then we'll change topics.
Wonderful. So Checkpoint Software has chosen like Azure Data Explorer as a data platform to complement their security products and network analytics. So when a user of Checkpoint is now trying to understand what their products are doing, then the queries actually go in the backend to Azure Data Explorer. That's very much the same pattern that we've seen with Azure Cost Management, that is doing the same thing, but also with Barracuda and Zscaler and others. So that's another very repetitive pattern that we've seen.
And also, I know that you'll say one, but I have to share another. There is a nice story about the collaboration between Azure Synapse and FedEx, how they leverage and they reduce cost and improved performance, leveraging the Azure Analytics, Synapse Analytics solution. Okay, now.
That's yeah.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So the next question is another one for Uri. Can you dive a little bit deeper into the differences between Azure Data Explorer and Synapse Data Explorer?
We have started with this question.
Yeah, no, by all means, like we can dive further in. The service underneath is exactly the same. The differences are exactly like how we manage the creation, like what is the billing of the clusters, like do we pass through the Azure cost, or do we simplify the costing and just like do storage pricing and vCore rather than like just pass through all the Azure storage different costs and all the Azure networking different costs, etc. So it's more about like integrating the same capability to fit well within the Azure Synapse Analytics workspace. The ARM surface for it is different. Practically, most of the differences are in the control plane. There are some hardening that happened in order to adhere to the Synapse Analytics, like enterprise promises around data leak prevention, and naturally the network isolation, the ability to run within the managed VNet of Synapse. These are the key differences, but the underlying service is exactly the same.
Awesome. So I think that we have just one last question, and then we'll wrap up. So we already touched on this a little bit, but around Synapse Data Explorer going GA, can you talk a little bit about that in the context of private networks?
The context of private networks.
So I think the use case here is that for whatever reason they have to use a private network for their instances. So they're currently using standalone ADX, and they want to transition to Synapse Data Explorer, but they obviously need that to be GA. Is that on a sort of similar timeline, similar conditions for just generally Synapse, or are there any other considerations with that?
So as I mentioned, what we are working on is to make it super easy to migrate an Azure Data Explorer cluster into a DX pool within Azure Synapse Analytics. The functionality that we are creating for that is the move all databases, so that we take all the data, all the semantics from one cluster, the ADX cluster that you're currently using, and we are moving all those databases into the DX pool that you've allocated in the Synapse workspace. That makes it super easy to migrate. We are going to release it in the next, like this year, like in the next month and a half, I believe. And that doesn't change the promise that I iterated earlier, that we are supporting the data explorer pools in Synapse as if there were GA. There are some things that prevent us from going GA at the moment, because we're waiting for multiple other things to multiple other dependencies to happen. But in terms of the service availability and reliability, we support, like, if the service is deployed in a region, then we support it just like we support ADX clusters.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that wraps up our questions for today and wraps up our session. I want to thank Uri and Svea for joining us today. I want to thank everybody for joining us that was a participant and sending in questions ahead of time. That's always very nice, of course, for presenters. One thing to note, we did drop a quick survey into the chat, so if you guys want to fill that up, we would appreciate that as well. Definitely look towards the next session. That one's going to be very exciting as well. It's going to have Bob Ward and Chuck Heiselman, and it's actually going to be live at the Past Data Community Summit, so a little bit different. Will be very exciting. I hear also Tyler will be there. Very exciting. Let's see. Obviously, check out the session and the Microsoft booth at Past Summit. Follow us on Twitter, of course, though I'm sure all of you influencers are always following us on Twitter. And of course, the hashtags are Synapse Influencers and Azure Synapse. Makes it easy for everybody to find your content as well as us to find your content. Again, if you have any other questions, you can email us at synapseinfluencers@microsoft.com. And thanks for joining us today. I was about to say all the YouTube stuff, but we'll save that for another video. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot.